You're listening to the MSPoweruser Podcast, which is the podcast for the Microsoft enthusiast and power user. We discuss the latest news from MSPoweruser.com about Windows, Microsoft, Xbox, Azure, all kinds of crazy stuff. My name is Vernon E. Smith, and I'm joined as usual by Andy Bennett. How you doing, Andy?
Doing pretty good. This has just been, like I said to you before recording, this is just another slow week, which I can't complain about. It's been kind of cold and rainy, but we're heading into fall, so that's to be expected.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it hasn't been a slow week for everyone, but it is. It's been busy for me, I guess.
Yeah, seeing how you got to go to Ignite, which that's fun.
It was fun, but like I told my wife, I have pretty much whenever I travel for work, just 4 or 5 times a year. And when I do, that is my time to splurge on videos or watch movies or whatever. And so I normally watch a movie or rent a movie or two to watch on the plane. And that's, that's my movie consumption usually. And on this trip, it was about 8 hours of flight time total.
Oh, man.
Between there and back. And I didn't watch anything. I was just busy working on stuff, doing what I could to prepare to cover the conference, and then also to help for one, edit a real quick episode that I recorded with someone coming back. Here's something we should add in here actually. We did record. If you're listening to this episode, of course you are. You probably listened to the previous one, which we recorded Tuesday morning. I recorded with Richard Hay. He's from the someone I met down there. He's known on Twitter as WinOBS. And we covered some of the heavy hitting or the top items, which was kind of interesting. And we're going to touch on some of those today as well. But Rich had some really good insight, so I'm glad he was able to.
Yeah, that was a fun listen, and also kind of it's partially fun and partially disappointing when I'm able to listen to it and be surprised because I wasn't there.
Oh, yeah. Well, you'll get your turn, I'm sure.
Yeah, one day.
I think the next Xbox, maybe the next Xbox event, you'll get opportunity.
That will be fun if it happens. Cool. When it happens, whatever. Mm-hmm. That'll be enjoyable.
Well, yeah. So, for example, like on the flight back, or more than that, I spent editing that episode because there was a lot of background noise, and as bad as it sounded when you listened to it, it was much worse before.
Oh,
so
man.
it really had to.
It actually wasn't too bad when I listened to it there, listened to the final product, because taking into account your location, that was pretty good.
Well, I learned a lot from being at this conference, such as like who I need to talk to about trying to get a room ahead of time, and not really counting on it. Just because it was relatively quiet when we started recording, expecting it to continue to be that quiet. So that was a little bit of a challenge. But we weren't right next to where they were eating, where like the food was laid out. But the food traffic picked up, part of the way through the recording.
Yeah, there was a point where you could tell that, I will admit.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm still exhausted, and I tried to write up a few articles, and as people who follow the site closely know, I do not post anything really, and so it's really a challenge for me, where some of these guys are very, very good at this, and I got to give a lot of credit to Mahidi and Pradeep and Sarur for really taking this news and getting it out there, right away, doing a very good job with it. What is the term? We were able to release all this news right at 9:00, right when the keynote started. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we got published. We got stuff published right out there on time, or rather, they did, because I sit over in my Xbox corner and watch the cool stuff unfold.
Yeah, you'll get your turn. You'll be swamped soon enough.
Oh yeah. There's always going to be a big announcement right around the corner at some point.
Mm-hmm. So they did so much of the work, and I just put on the miles. I mean, we could talk about the convention center itself too. I mean, if we have time at the end or whatever, maybe I'll mix it in. but it's an enormous, several buildings, enormous area. And even just the fact that, even just to get a decent hotel or a decently priced hotel, I'll admit it was not, it wasn't one of the nicest ones I've stayed in lately. It was probably the worst hotel I stayed in the last few years. But that's okay. It was reasonably priced. It was about 15 miles from where we were staying, where the conference was. So,
yeah.
So there were I think this year there were 23,000 attendees at the Ignite conference. And of course that doesn't count. I think there were about 500 or so staff members that were there. And then there was, I don't know what it was, a couple hundred, maybe not 200, at least between 100 and 200 members of the press, or I should say media, that were there. I didn't count them. I'm not very good at estimating that, but that was pretty interesting. And then all the vendors, of course, there's a great big exhibit hall where they showed off all types of third party.
I saw a picture today where they, I think it was again Richard Hay who put up a picture of one of the stores there, and it's like, hey, they're selling Scott Guthrie's shirt.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it was kind of cool to see those folks up on stage and be, literally right off the edge of the stage with them and grab a few decent pics. That was kind of cool. So,
yeah, that had to be nice.
So, well, we'll run down some of this stuff. Basically, one of the main reasons that we went is so that we would get to get in the night before and to have a press briefing ahead of time so that we understood. And so we knew what was happening, and then at 9 o'clock when the keynote began, then we could release all this information. So Sunday night, Frank Shaw, one of the, I don't know if he's a VP or just one of the top guys at Microsoft, has been there for a long time. He made a point that he wanted to get this info out early so everyone could better analyze this and let people understand, help people understand this better. And he talked about how Microsoft is just trying to empower every person on the planet. That was one of those are,
do great things.
Yeah, to do great things. So they also had Judson Althoff come out. I did not know who this person was to begin with, but he basically ran this press release and he did a great job with it. Well, while Microsoft is going through this digital transformation, they are talking about how they are helping other companies go through a digital transformation. So some of these companies include Renault, Nissan. They go. An example that was given was machine learning. Just broadly, they're using it in a lot of their manufacturing and also like the designing and engineering, things like that.
Yeah.
Lowe's, the what do you call it? The home improvement store, I suppose.
Yeah, that's what I'd classify them as.
They are using HoloLens already, and it's actually getting very close to being basically in, I don't know what you want to call it, in production, but like they're already trialing this out, and they actually gave an incredible demo of it on stage at the keynote. That was, I guess I'm blanking. I guess that was the second keynote. That was in the afternoon. And Satya Nadella gave that keynote, and they showed how someone could use HoloLens to pick out the new countertops or new cupboards or different, putting in an island or something in their kitchen.
Oh, wow. And that's pretty cool.
And I'm not usually very forward-thinking on a lot of this stuff, but I would say when HoloLens came, I'm certain that when HoloLens came out, or it was announced almost 2 years ago, whatever that was the exact thing I was thinking of. I'm like, my wife would love this. And that's exactly how they demoed it. They showed, a couple going through, they're both wearing a HoloLens, and they basically just looked at this. They had a skeleton of a kitchen, and then they had the Lowe's representative walk them through and, what if we change this or that or whatever. Now, it was scripted and it was acted out, and it was very evident that that part was horrible. but the demo was really good. I mean, showing what could happen was obvious. I mean, like that is
HoloLens is a device with near infinite potential.
Mm-hmm. So that's nice to see. It was a good demo in that regard. Yeah. They also included Facebook, and they used a specific example here Where Facebook, they are empowering their workforce, basically through Office 365, and just giving them more flexibility and freedom and things like that using Microsoft services. And they didn't go into great detail, but they were just trying to give some examples.
Yeah.
And of course, Tyco, the company Tyco, they are using Microsoft's hybrid cloud. And I'm not going to go into great detail about that right now either. But these were some big name companies that Microsoft was really proud to be servicing.
Yeah.
So, and basically they gave some numbers too, one of them being that 89% of Fortune 500 companies use a Microsoft product. I mean, that's nuts.
I'd just like to interject here and say that it feels like, especially looking at some of the things going on at Ignite, it makes you realize that Microsoft is moving to be much less of a consumer-focused company, like even with, say, Windows Phone, where it's become a business-focused operating system for a while now with Windows 10 Mobile. But you look at some of this other stuff, and it sort of feels like Microsoft is becoming almost totally business-focused. I mean, maybe there's something I'm missing out on here. I mean, there's certainly a lot of consumer-focused stuff at Microsoft, don't get me wrong, but their motto with Windows 10 was do great things, and it's showing with some of this stuff. You see companies using Office 365. You see even a select few starting to use HoloLens to prototype or to design or figure out how they could even use HoloLens in their day-to-day. And you see all this stuff starting to come together, and you see this web being weaved. It's like, as you look at the consumer side of Microsoft, I will admit that starts to feel kind of sad and neglected right now. I mean, it doesn't look like a positive outlook, but as you look at the business side, everything is flourishing.
Well, I can see how that is pretty evident to a lot of people, but I will, following Microsoft for a bit now, not understanding the enterprise stuff very well, but knowing full well that it's been there and knowing that has been the backbone, and it's definitely actually a pretty big moneymaker for them. I personally don't think their broad focus is really shifting much. I think they're still servicing their enterprise customers well and trying to do better at it. And I think with consumer, I mean, with Xbox One and of course the One S, I'm sorry. And then also with the Surface line, those are consumer things. So in a way, I think
Surface is kind of a middle ground where on one hand, it is designed to be attractive to the consumer, but on the other hand, it is very much a productivity device.
That's true. I think one way to kind of draw that line is that for the most part, well, this isn't a true delineation, but you can think of devices almost always being a consumer product where people are buying the hardware, whereas a service is more likely to be an enterprise or business thing. Now, the exceptions obviously are that like the Surface Hub is obviously an enterprise device, and Xbox Live is obviously
Xbox One. You mean the service? Yeah. The service, yes. I'm sorry.
Where that service is definitely a consumer side, but I think those are the only two that I can think of that cross. I don't know. And to be honest, Andy, like I hadn't thought about this stuff as much, or not often really, until I went to Ignite, and that was one of the greatest things I was looking forward to, is understanding the business side of this just a little bit better. And like I told you earlier, and like what I told Sarer before I even went, it was like, I want to distill down this enterprise stuff, this business news, and help consumers understand it a little bit. So I don't know. We'll see. So as you interjected, that was perfect. Keep interjecting. Keep asking questions. That's I want that. But to pick up where I left off, I said 89% of Fortune 500 companies use a Microsoft product, and I forgot to write it in my notes here, but they also said that 75% of Fortune 500 companies use multiple Microsoft products or services. So it's not like, they're actually, no, I think it was like
did they
three
say
or more
if by multiple products or services they meant like would they count, say, Word and PowerPoint as just Office or as multiple products /services? That's what I would like to know. I would assume they would count it as just one.
That's the assumption I'm making. Yeah, I feel that
that would
Office
I think that would explain why
includes...
there's such a difference between the 89 and the 75.
Well, no, I guess maybe I'm not sure what you mean by that. I think
Like
of the Office suite as one product.
If there is that percentage of people that are only using one Microsoft service for their business, which one would it be? You'd instantly go to Office. But if they were counting, say, Word and PowerPoint as different products, that would be even more curious then.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Okay. So obviously there's a lot of big companies out there using Microsoft services, and that's what they're trying to highlight. They're showing that there's a lot of strength there, and it's understandable. So at Ignite, there were 3 key areas of focus: security, intelligence, and cloud. And some of these they went real in depth on, and some just scratched the surface on. But we'll go through.
Oh, no. The last thing you want is a scratched surface.
Yeah, I don't want a scratched surface.
Those are words you do not want to have uttered at a Microsoft event.
That's true. Yeah. And by the way, it was awesome to see so many Surface devices at this event. It was pretty cool. So security's the boring one, right?
Not really.
But this is something that I had never heard of before. And for the most part, this seemed like a very, very new concept, at least the way they're doing it. So what it's called is Windows Defender Application Guard for Edge. And Windows Defender is the broad product that we use to, obviously take care of our computer, Windows Defender. Application Guard sounds kind of broad, but in this case, it is specifically for a browser. And to begin with, only for Microsoft Edge. Obviously not for Internet Explorer. They did say in the pre-briefing that it would be coming to other browsers, potentially to other browsers, Chrome, Firefox, whatever. But they never actually mentioned that during the keynote, so I want to make that clear. They're planning to roll this out eventually to other browsers.
And this is something that even I'm kind of excited to see in action, even if it is something that is currently focused toward businesses. I want to see this applied at a consumer level. And, you can go into depth about how it works now, but...
Well, that's the thing. That's about all I know. But it is way above my head. But I mean, it's basically running on a virtualized machine on your PC, and so that way, if something is, just call it malware, bad stuff coming in. Okay, if that happens and is trying to crack into your PC, it's only cracking into that micro virtualized machine.
And this is the only one that I really know anything about on this list, to be honest with you.
Okay.
And it uses Hyper-V, which has long been a feature of Windows, to simply virtualize one window. And this was something that I believe it was Windows 7 Ultimate that had Windows XP mode that functioned in a similar way. It was just Hyper-V machine running Windows XP, and for just that one specific window. So, in a way, this is kind of similar to something they've done in the past, but totally, totally different in what it's meant for, And so it creates one specific Edge window that is totally on its own and has its own visual distinction to say, this is a window that is Application Guard. And now, this is meant for businesses right now. This is not something you will see in the consumer versions of Windows for a long time, if not ever. And then... what you'll see is that your employer has to configure it on a work PC, and it will automatically engage at times if you were to open a link that is either blacklisted or not whitelisted. As far as actually, maybe not sure about the blacklist part, but whitelist for sure. I know that if it's not on the whitelist, it's going to open up in this by default, meaning that businesses are far less at risk about someone opening up a fishy email link and all of a sudden the network's infected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you did explain it pretty well there. And as far as it coming out to consumers, we're not expecting that anytime soon. This will be available for insiders quite soon, but basically it's just for Office, or I should say...
Enterprise.
Well, Enterprise broadly, but I'm trying to think of specifically what it would be. I don't remember what it is. Enterprise Insider. Okay, I don't know if that's exactly a thing.
I think. Well, there are currently enterprise builds that are compiled for insiders, so would just be a Windows Insider on the enterprise SKU.
I think I understand that way, I suppose. Now, someone who filled me in on more specifics with this, he did tell me that a consumer insider would be able to use this if they set up their own group policy and they follow the not simple steps basically to add this in.
Yeah.
And so that's good. That we have that option. I won't be taking advantage of that. I'm not going to dig that deeply, but it's something that will be available to non-enterprise insiders.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll include like an easy switch or something to make it easier to test.
Not
like
I don't know.
not like something built into settings. I mean, but like include some file you can download off the Windows blogs that enables those group policies and configures it all to make it work so that it can be tested more widely. I don't totally expect them to do that, but it would be nice if they did.
Yeah, I got the distinct feeling. I mean, he was being very polite about it, but he basically said, "Yeah, consumers, we're not going to hide this from people, but we're not going to we're not laying out we're not paving a smooth path for them, purposefully."
Yeah, I get you.
So, and it wasn't like trying to, deter people from doing it, but basically it was for those real power users that wanted to, like I said, set up their own group policy. And of course, there's people that do that. I'm not in that category. So
I guess you could call them MS Power users.
Perhaps. So part of this, excuse me, one other thing that they're rolling out, this is a much smaller feature, but basically there's going to be intelligent sharing between Windows Defender itself and, the application guard will include intelligent sharing between Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection. So there's a whole bunch of different acronyms there. I'm not even going to get into that, but like that, the point is that on the back end, this is making everyone safer. This is improving, say if there's let's just call it virus for lack of a better term, to be broad about it. If there's a potential virus or malware that is recognized with Windows Defender Application Guard for Edge, well, then that goes into the database or whatever, and it can be recognized more easily by Windows Defender on the consumer side. And of course, it's making
that's an excellent idea.
So that is being helpful, of course.
Yeah.
So part of Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection, there's a few more enhancements that were announced. These are new. Dynamic delivery, and I wrote that word down. I do not remember what that is, but that is a thing. If you have it in the rundown there, maybe you can add to it. But don't. Most people will be just fine if they miss this, I believe.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not trying to belittle this news, but we have a lot we want to cover here. URL detonation, I know that's going to stick out to people because it's a fun word. People know what a URL is, and detonation is always, fun. But
that's two fun words combined. It is the most fun thing to talk about,
And so basically, if it recognizes a threatening URL, it's going to open that in a secure area, in a virtualized machine or whatever, virtualized app space, and contain it. That's the best way I can explain it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, this is expansion to SharePoint, expanding out to that as well. And I guess I don't actually remember that part of it either. So I guess I just have it written down.
I can interject again if that helps.
Please do, yes.
Well, more about, the constant talk about virtualization more than anything else, that it seems like if you want to be secure, you're going to have virtualization put into something at some point. And I want to see this expanded and expanded and expanded as we go down the road. Not just for enterprise, of course. I mean, there's a lot of consumer machines that would be too weak to even think of doing this, though, so it's probably going to stay that way. But having a window virtualized or just one application virtualized, that is a significantly more powerful way of protecting a PC than the majority of antiviruses out there.
That makes sense. I understand that part. Well, good.
I just want to see that side expanded even more and more, because we're seeing the seed sown, and I'm waiting for the crop, I guess.
Yeah. Well, nice. So those things I listed were announced at on Monday morning, and these next few things have reached general availability. These were known, but they are now getting released, or were released at that time. So part of it is Azure Information Protection. That's just one more list item, but it's basically part of the E5 SKU. There's two main enterprise SKUs, E5 and E3. E5 is a little bit better one, basically for Office 365. Also coming to general availability was the Secure Productive Enterprise, and that wasn't actually on Monday. That is available on November 1st. So that pretty much wraps up the security part of it.
Well, wait a second. Secure Productive Enterprise? I guess the name kind of says what it's supposed to be, I guess.
Yeah, and that's they didn't detail that because that was detailed in the past, which obviously I was not at that press.
Okay.
I was not at that press conference, and it moved quickly to the bottom of my priority list, unfortunately. So, if you want to know more about that, don't ask me. Go talk to someone else, I guess.
I'm gonna have to talk to the internet now.
Yep, internet. So I did not. Yeah, I could only focus my time on so many things here.
It's an Office product.
Yeah. Well, as one, yeah. So the second pillar here was the intelligence, and this got a little bit more fun. This was pretty cool. So pervasive intelligence in Office 365. So this was just almost a one-line thing that they talked about at the press release, at the pre-briefing. But then afterwards, we had some awesome demos where they talked about several different things, which I don't have in these notes actually, but one of them being TAP for Word and Outlook. So TAP is kind of a lame name for it, but basically it means that you can add in, you can pull data from a PowerPoint or an Excel spreadsheet that you have, not just a template or not something offsite, but something you've already created or someone in your work group has created. So say you have a spreadsheet in Excel. It just makes it much easier to pull that spreadsheet in. And it's not just like add existing Excel spreadsheet. It's much more than that. Really makes it very intuitive. And it was the demo blew my mind. It's just not something I use very often, and it's difficult to convey. But it's a big deal for people that use Outlook and Word, a lot. Also, along with that was the PowerPoint. See, I'm doing this from memory now. I have to look up maybe it's in another portion of my notes here. Maybe when we get down to that next part here. But pervasive intelligence basically in Office 365, meaning that all these different things help these different apps interact with each other. I guess one of them is maps. So for example, in Excel, you could have a list of data. You could have so many widgets consumed per county, per state, like whatever, something geographic. And so in that list or that data, you can easily turn that into a map, a very nice map, by the way. And it's incredible what you could do with that, and obviously all the colors and things like that. But just imagine our election coming up here. There will be plenty of people. That's the
last thing I want to think about.
I know. But there will be plenty on news sites, whatever, CNN, Fox News, whatever you want to call it, whoever they are, they're going to have maps. They're going to show dynamic maps. And these maps that they pulled in from Excel look like that. They were fantastic. They were incredible. They weren't graphical. I mean, they weren't moving graphics, but they were stills. But they were still very, very, very good.
About apps working together, that is one of my favorite things that was in Windows 8. And seems to kind of have been toned down in Windows 10, sadly, but say the share charm.
Mm-hmm.
That was, that's almost not exactly the same thing, but apps working together, the same concept, is something that is incredibly helpful, and there is almost no downside to it that I can think of.
Yeah, I agree, and that's really nice. I mean, I know what you're talking about with the share charm. I love that on my Surface RT, and that's probably why you're mentioning that. I get it.
Yeah.
So,
and I wish it had more Windows 10 usage, but anyways, apps working together is something that, like I said, doesn't have much of a downside. You have more productivity, you have a simpler experience, you have less of a barrier from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, simple.
Yeah.
So there's something in PowerPoint called Quick Starter, and in most Office apps there is a template. Obviously, you can pull from just a variety of templates, but Quick Starter is a next level from that, and it's very incredible. Basically, like say you wanted to, the example they used was coffee. You could just type in coffee or something, and it would pull up images, and then you could from there you could not just add in an image, which are all part of Creative Commons. Like you could pull all those and they, no copyright problems. And then it would even just pull in the actual color. Actually, I think I remember we mentioned all this stuff. Go back to the previous episode and Rich and I covered.
Not episode 14.
Yeah, the middle one.
Ignite Special.
The Ignite Special. Rich and I covered this stuff very, very in-depth. Rich has a great grasp on this, better than I, obviously. And so go back to there. I'm not going to try to explain this anymore, but pervasive intelligence in Office 365 was great. And this is rolling out now to existing users. I think on the Office Insider program, but then it'll come out soon after that. Also,
about a pervasive intelligence. So to basically sum it up, it is basic. Well, wait a second. Now, where do you type the first word? Like, say, like you said, type the word coffee. Is that something typed into the into the document after making it, or before making it, or?
Well, you basically just highlight it and then like a right click or like
I see.
Kind of a pop-out thing.
PowerPoint already has some similar features with the same, not similar features, but rather features with the same goal of helping out productivity by almost automating some work, where if you insert an image, it gives you the design options to insert it on all sorts of different positions on the PowerPoint, say as a background, changing the design of the template to that image. So is it coming to PowerPoint too? Because that would be interesting to see if it's used there.
Yeah, this is that's what I was referring to, PowerPoint.
Okay.
Yeah, so that'll be cool. Very good. And it's called Quick Starter. Go back and listen to the other previous little sub episode, or what do you call it, interim episode we had there, special I should say. So Delve Analytics is being renamed to My Analytics. Delve Analytics is different than Delve, and we won't delve into that. But Delve Analytics, which is now My Analytics, basically tracks what you do in Calendar and in Outlook. And this is, you opt into this, and it is something that you, as they made it very clear, it is not something that your boss sees. It's just something for you to help you. But you can also share this information with like a mentor or something like that. And basically just tracking what you're doing with your how productive or how you spend your time online, or at least in Outlook. And
that could help people plan their days better.
Yeah, it really could. And we use some more specific examples in the previous episodes. Go back and listen to that. But also, Relationship Assistant for Dynamic 365 for Sales. And I don't remember much about that, but basically I wrote down here that it's bringing intelligence to every aspect of Dynamics 365. Okay. So, but that's, they made a really big deal about that, and they didn't really explain it to me why. It's just apparently Dynamic 365 is a big deal. So they talked, go ahead.
I think, are we currently on the Outlook page of stuff? Because I think that would be kind of neat to talk about some of the stuff that was introduced there. Like I saw an article you put up about how Outlook's dark theme is getting darker.
Well, we're not there yet. I'm still about halfway down the first page. Sorry. So, and then they also talked about Cortana intelligence, except they didn't actually use the word Cortana. They used it on the screen. It was a slide, said Cortana. But then, and I actually, at the end of it, I asked the question, well, Cortana was on the slide, but you didn't actually talk about that. Where are you drawing the line? They said, well, Cortana is just, the agent. They just clarified it. And that all of the back end stuff, they didn't say the word Bing, but like all the machine learning stuff on the back end is working whether for your good, whether it's through Cortana or not, and that kind of cleared it up. So I was surprised that they printed or they had the word Cortana on the slide, but didn't really talk about it. But
what are the odds that they wanted to avoid saying "Hey Cortana" or anything along those lines, and you all of a sudden just see the entire you can hear the entire audience, just hear all of their devices light up at once.
That is a humorous idea, but oddly enough, I shouldn't be that surprised. Actually, there were so many people using the MacBook Airs and MacBook Pros there. Most of them just being the analysts, the people that were there for the financial stuff and to get a feel. And
admittedly, I kind of expect the MacBook users to be most of the press.
Yeah, and there was still many more people than I expected that were taking notes on paper and with a pen, and I'm okay with that. I mean, at work, I have a tiny little notepad, carry around in my pocket, and I take notes that way. That's fine. I was just a little bit surprised to see it there.
Saves battery, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. So, all right, one more thing that they talked about. Well, there's plenty of things, but something kind of exciting was that Uber, they showed a video of how Uber has been using Microsoft's back end, basically. So Uber added this real-time ID check. And it was interesting, in the CEO or CFO or something of Uber talked about it. He said, Uber drivers can take a self photo to identify, who they are when they log in and just say, make sure it's them. Well, they said self photo, but later on, Satya had no problem calling it a selfie. So it's kind of, it was a little interesting. I thought I had to add that. But
one more interjection. How did it feel to be in the same room as Satya Nadella?
That was pretty cool. That was all right. I got some decent pics of him with, or not how good they were, but like some pics of him with the Adobe CEO or whatever the head guy from Adobe was.
That would be pretty neat to be at.
I mean, they were on stage. I was obviously off stage, wasn't like I was hanging out with them.
Still, that had to be cool.
That was cool. Yeah. So I actually going way off track here, but a friend of mine on Twitter he was there and he was up in the seats and he posted a picture from Twitter from the seats down at the stage. So I took a picture from next to the stage up at where he was, and I posted it back at him. I said, I don't know what I said. I see you, or I didn't say that. I don't know. I didn't say anything. I just posted the picture, just showing my vantage point. So, Frank Shaw, after the Uber thing, he basically just said, AI won't replace humans, but it's here to empower them, because there's people that are worried about artificial intelligence, and yeah, it can always go horribly, horribly wrong. Terminator, but that is their goal, is to just give people the tools and help them do things more easily. Moving to the third pillar here, the cloud pillar. So general availability of a few things. This will be an easy one. Windows Server 2016. We knew that was coming. System Center 2016. Most people expected that was coming. And those have already been detailed before this even announced. I don't even know if there's any major changes. It wasn't something anyone really talked about in depth, and I was fine glossing over it.
Windows Server 2016 finally coming out kind of surprises me with because I have been hearing a lot of negative stuff about the stability of it. Maybe they'll get patched up with some last minute thing, but I have been hearing many complaints from some people I know about it, and they have not had any positive experiences. However, that's just a couple of people, and hopefully the rest of the world will have a much better time with it than they did. But, yeah. Maybe it's just that I have only one half the story. We'll find out.
Okay. Well, they announced general availability of those two, and then also they announced about the next preview of Azure Stack. Again, something I just glossed over, as most people did. One thing they thought was they announced briefly, but then elaborated later in the one of the keynotes, is FPGA, Field Programmable Gate Arrays, powered by Azure. Whatever, I don't know what that is. I mean, it didn't matter what that was because they did a very good demo explaining what it could do. And basically, they talked about like all of Wikipedia or something. I don't know how much of Wikipedia it was, but if it was printed out, it would have been a stack of paper a quarter of a mile high, and they translated all of that, whatever, to I don't know what they meant by translate it, but they did that in 1/10 of a second. And after they did that, they said, oh, by the way, some of you might have blinked, and it takes humans 2/10 of a second to blink. And I actually did think I missed it. I mean, like, they showed two different comparisons before that. Some, progress bar going, quick, and then another progress bar going quite a bit quicker, only taking a couple seconds to go across. And so I was expecting the next demo to be something like that, and I missed it. I mean, like, literally, it just, like, nobody saw it 1/10 of a second. So that was pretty impressive to the people that understand field programmable gate arrays or something. And the point was that it proved the point that all this geeky stuff is working on the back end to help the people just get their job done, just giving people the tools to go do something cool. And, that way you don't, if you want to go, I don't know, I can't think of a good example, but basically just letting technology get out of the way and help you do it, let you do it. I think that point came across pretty clearly.
Yeah, that's the way it should be, really.
Yeah. So, they announced a really big key cloud partnership, and they didn't actually tell us about it Sunday night because it was pretty big news, and of course now everyone knows it was with Adobe, and it was basically that Azure is now Adobe's primary cloud storage provider. Now, it doesn't mean that Azure is Adobe's exclusive cloud storage provider, but they still made a really big deal about it, and most people do believe this is substantial. And there's smarter people than I that are talking about this.
I mean, you don't even have to be smart to see. Okay, Microsoft, big company with big cloud, and then Adobe, big company with big products. And you can just, merge those in this crazy math equation that takes a lot of work to finally get the answer to. But the final result is, whoa, big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Big meets big meets big meets big. Well, of course, the answer is big. I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So we're going much more in depth than this than I thought. I thought we would have.
We've gone real deep into the rabbit hole, and we're only at page 1 of 4.
Still on the first page, yeah. So we'll skip over some of this stuff, but there were a couple. They had a question and answer session at the end, and one of them was about the Windows adoption rate, and they said that they announced that there were 400 million Windows devices, active monthly Windows devices or users using Windows 10, and that was good, but it was not on track to their 1 billion. They didn't say this, but it was understood.
Yeah, it was announced like maybe a month or two ago that they were not going to hit the 1 billion goal on time.
And so they still said, this is what I wrote down here, that the 1 billion is still the goal. The timeline may be a little different. And as I've, there's other people you can talk to or listen to that understand this better. Windows Weekly, for example. Obviously, listen to our show, but that's a good show as well. They dig into this into a little geekier over my head sometimes, and they have comments on that as well. Moving on. Skype Teams. One of the questions, this was awesome. Someone asked, well, what about Skype Teams? And of course, Skype Teams, first of all, I mean, you either wanted to slap the guy or, pat him on the back because, Skype Teams hasn't been announced, of course. And so Frank Shaw, this is relatively common response, but it was just hilarious how he responded. He had a kind of a snicker and a kind of a funny smile. And he goes, we don't talk about what we haven't talked about. So that was interesting. So, all right. Moving on to,
personally, I'd be afraid that they would see the MS-Poweruser mark on our badge and toss you out. At that point. They
don't think they would have hesitated if they were concerned. They would, But obviously,
not concerned. But I'm just joking around here, of course.
Yeah, but I mean, there was they handled some pretty tough questions pretty handily. There was a question about clouds or hybrid cloud. They basically said, "Well, I was talking to the Oracle CEO, and he just said, well, Microsoft's been doing it for 10 years, but we're actually shipping a product," basically slamming Microsoft. And so that was fielded pretty well, actually, and pretty in depth, talking about hybrid cloud and how not only is hybrid cloud isn't just a OneDrive, just like a place to dump your stuff. Hybrid cloud, as Microsoft sees it, is basically the integration of all those Microsoft services and helping a company put all that stuff together and work well together. And not only within Microsoft services, but also other services tying together between, like plugins. Think of it that way. Just having, OneDrive for Business or Azure or SharePoint, whatever, plugging into other things well. And that's part of hybrid cloud, as opposed to just being, okay, well, you can store your piles of data here in a file format and everyone can search around and find it if they need to. It's not that.
That's pretty interesting.
It's deeper. And so it was a great response. Obviously, one could consider it a PR response, and that's fine. But they had a good answer for how they were doing hybrid cloud better than Amazon Web Services, for example, AWS. So, I don't know what else to say about that, I guess. Let's move on to Outlook, because Outlook is fun.
I already mentioned the fact that dark theme's getting darker, so now we have to talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. So this was all in one 20-minute section. Well, and two things. I chatted with an Outlook PR guy for, almost an hour about a lot of different things. And some of them were just complaints on my own, like, man, you got to make sure that Microsoft or that Outlook on Windows Phone gets all the better features first. And I was kind of joking, but I wanted him to know that there were still Windows Mobile fans out there. But also, they had this 20-minute session where they covered most of this stuff, and that's what I'm going to cover next. So they talked about they want to drive end-user happiness. They said they're doubling down on Outlook, and it just sounded like a catchphrase to begin with, but after the demos and what they were talking about, it made sense. I understood it. They want to delight customers, not always a term you hear too often, but it is nice to hear that. So they did demo a few things. They demoed Focused Inbox. And that's a big deal. It's coming. It's already available in some places, and it will be on every Outlook product. They expect by the end of the year, actually, for Focused Inbox. Search is improving, and so that is something where even if you mistype a search, like I don't know if you use Outlook on the desktop, but Control E goes to your search, your inbox, and if you mistype something, it's still going to catch it. It's going to try to understand what you mean. It's also going to be searching through pictures, which is pretty nice. Also, coming soon will be document collaboration. And they didn't really talk about that much. That's going to be sometime in 2017. And then also Groups, which is here for some, and it will be rolled out to other places. Another one I thought was really cool was summary cards for travel and packages. So much of what we buy now is online from Amazon or eBay or whatever. And, we get that notification, or especially if it's like from FedEx or UPS or something, of all this data in there of when and where, and you almost have to sift through it and find the important stuff. And so they're coming up with these summary cards. Basically, it's going to track. I mean, it comes in from one of these places, or it sees this data and recognizes the words, and it's just going to give you a little card that says, "Yep, this item, this time, this this place or whatever." And that's fantastic.
That definitely is. I already use Cortana to track my packages a lot already, and that's going to be nice.
Yeah, fantastic. Same thing for travel, because when I fly, I mean, you've got anywhere I fly, I usually have at least 2 different flights, and oftentimes they're delayed or rescheduled or something. Not often, but too often at least. And it to have a summary card for that, because same thing, you get an email of what this is and when and whatever, and just to summarize that is wonderful. So that's really fantastic, and I don't want to overuse the word fantastic, but that was great. Conversation View is coming in the inbox, and that is, I really don't remember where that. See, that's kind of confusing to me, because I use Conversation in my inbox for. What am I missing? Oh, I'm sorry. Conversation View is coming to everything, just like in Groups, but also social gestures. They said gestures plural, but they only mentioned a like. So if you like something in an email, this seems kind of clunky and a little bit, I don't know, trying to fight with Facebook of all things. But I guess it's a good thing to have in there. Also, @mentions is could be very valuable, because you could have a relatively large email thread with a lot of recipients or participants in it. And if you need to be more specific about something, you can @mention someone. Also, these are some of the little geeky things they talked about. Right now, they're moving to where you can have hard drive files as attachments, and obviously that can happen. But now they can be right-clicked on, right as an attachment, and to upload it to OneDrive right from there. And that saves a step, and that's something that these power users. And in Outlook, I consider myself a quasi-power user, and hopefully plenty of MS power users are familiar with this. This is a good thing for a lot of people, and they're trying to delight customers, trying to drive end user happiness. Previews of photos as the attachments. So like you get an email with attachments in there, you can see it's a JPEG or something, but if you just they're going to have where you have a little thumbnail in there, a preview, and that obviously is very helpful. I mean, that's great. I like that. And then, like, if you set up a meeting, you can view the tracking tab without being the organizer. You can see who else is going to that meeting, even if you're not the organizer of that. And that's another niche thing, but that I can see how this is very useful, and I can see I've had a need for that myself. Also, when you're setting up a meeting, you got 5, 10, whatever people you want to have in that meeting. When you put them in there, and then you switch over to the scheduling tab in Outlook Mail, sometimes it really takes a long time for that to load, depending on the back end. But still, to see everyone's their schedule, it takes a long time. So they've pre-cached that. So of your top, it doesn't say how many, but whatever, 5, 10 or something people that you work with the most, they're going to have that. So it's going to be quicker. And yeah, just a tiny little thing that they're adding, but this is something that like I said, is going to delight customers, I believe. And they believe that. They're listening, and they're trying to make it better. The reading pane is now it will be black or dark, will be added to the general theme of black theme. And whatever, go read the article about it. I'm not going to elaborate on it, but this is a welcome thing. And lastly, they're refreshing the look, the UI of Outlook for Windows. So for so long, Outlook, Win32 app has been just added, layers and layers have been added to it. And of course they had the ribbon, and now like the auto hide ribbon, they're trying to clean it up. And there's still so many awesome features in there, and it's kind of overwhelming to some people. And they also have Outlook on the web, and of course like the Mail app, which is pretty bare bones but still powerful. And so what they're doing is that they want Outlook itself, Outlook, the Win32 app, to look similar to, or very similar to, Outlook.com on the web. So the UI changes were...
I wonder if we'll see the same thing happen across all of Office.
Well, I would imagine so eventually. I think they're trying... Well, like Word, for example, is already pretty similar. I mean, the pared down versions of them look pretty similar. You easily recognize it. But I would say Outlook, very, very feature rich and feature overwhelming for some. I think that is a barrier for some people to use it. And so changing the UI of it, and they showed some examples of it, just kind of cleaning it up, trimming back on some of the Chrome. I'll use Rich Hayes' words. That was wise, and I think that's really interesting. That's going to be both in Outlook Win32 app, and of course coming to Outlook.com. Let's scroll over. Let's go through a last little bit here. I had a couple different one-on-one sessions.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to hurry it up.
Yeah, I think if we go over a little, we'll be fine. I do want to share these little bits of insight here. It's the whole reason I went. So security, super boring. Okay, we already talked about the application guard basically and the URL detonation, but they wanted to make it clear. Okay, I sat down with this guy. I said, help me pass on some relevant information to consumers because I don't understand this very well. And yeah, and to come to think of it, I pretty much covered all this stuff. I just mixed it in. Everything I have in my notes for this session, I basically already talked about. But E5 is the next level enterprise Office 365 level or whatever. It's not the base one, and that will Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection application guard is coming to the E5 level, not right away to the E3, if at all. Obviously, all this is through Bing. Like I talked about, it would be basically part of your group policy, so insiders could do that if they set up their own group policy. And this is basically adding on. It's similar to Credential Guard and Device Guard, which are already available with the E5 subscription. One of those is with E3 too. I forget which one that is. So, and then of course hybrid cloud. I talked a lot about that already. Basically, they want it to just be a seamless extension of Microsoft services. They're just trying to work together to pull all these things together. They talked about Tyco, the company, basically like it's acting like a startup. They, used to be you'd have development group, a test group, an operations group. Now it's just all part of DevOps. This big company, Tyco, is trying to act like a startup, and that's why they pulled Microsoft in to help them with this stuff and just keep them nimble. And they compared it to Amazon Web Service, AWS, just being, like I said, just a dumb bucket for data, where Microsoft integrates better. And then hybrid cloud, just some examples of what would be part of that. Operations Management Suite, SQL Server, Office itself, and SharePoint, and Windows Server 16. And the best thing I learned out of this is that, as I understood it, Azure is all the cloud stuff. Azure is cloud, and OneDrive is one of those services that takes advantage of Azure. Because I didn't understand that well enough, and maybe that's almost too simple, but that's what I got out of it. So
I think that might be a good note to end on.
Yeah, I suppose so. So that was
Microsoft Ignite.
Yeah, well, that wasn't even all of it, but that's fine. I didn't. We did talk about the HoloLens demo. That's good in the keynotes, and I guess
I think we got the biggest stuff down.
Okay. I'm not sure how much where we're going to end up on time as far as things we're cutting out, but I do want to just add that it was really cool to go, obviously, but that I put in less steps there than I do on a normal work day. And I heard everybody complaining about how far away everything was. And yeah, it was enormous. I mean, there were 23,000 people there. And there was one particular bottleneck, which everything was, everyone had to go through, from building B to building C or whatever. And there's 3 escalators, and there's already a bottleneck. And this one escalator was always broken down. There's always a guy there trying to fix this escalator.
Oh, man.
I've got pictures of people just lined up. It was ridiculous. It was pretty humorous. But, I mean, you can still walk across the whole thing in 15 minutes. It's just that, I don't know, everyone else was kind of complaining about it. And I thought it was just really cool. I don't know. So, I'm glad I was able to go, and I really hope that some of what I shared, I don't know what you want to call it, reignites a little bit of people's enthusiasm for the boring Microsoft stuff. Because the people that do this for a living, they have to do it. It's not by choice. And if they can, if Microsoft can make their jobs easier, and they can help people get excited about it, well, that is a huge win for Microsoft. And
yeah,
I saw nothing but wins at this. It was fantastic.
Wins, and windows.
Yep. All right. Well, that is about it. Andy, you got anything else you want to add?
Not really anything I can think of, actually.
Okay.
Other than that, I am definitely calling this episode Ignited.
All right. Okay. Well, folks, thank you for listening to another episode. You can follow the site on Twitter, of course, and you can follow myself on Twitter at Vernon E, and Andy is on Twitter at FusionFan45. That's it. Have a great week, everyone.
Yep. Have a great week.
Bye.